Good morning. Welcome to the 2024 edition of the Innovation Lightning Rounds. And I'm Darrell Gunter. I will be your MC for the day. And I want to introduce our speakers, Mr. Thomas Phillips, Executive Director, Digital Theological Library. We have Josh McDonald and Elizabeth Kuntz from the George Washington University. Miss Linda Rosen and is Nicholas here?
Nope, just me.
Oh, Nicholas, he didn't come. He's a contributor. Okay. From the Harvard Business School. And then we have Mr. Robert Weaver. Robert? It's right here, Robert Weaver. Yep. And he's from the Liberty University. He's the collection development librarian. Last but not least, we have Mr. Richard Hodges and Mr. Jamie Wright. Richard is from the Florida Southwestern State College, and Jamie Wright is from Collection HQ. All right, so without further ado, we're going to present Mr. Thomas Phillips. Thomas, come on up.
Hi there. I'm from the Digital Theological Library. Oh, they put it on here. That I'm going to talk about what we're doing with print collections for AI. To start out with, we are mercilessly mission-driven at the Digital Theological Library. Our mission, although we're non-confessional, we aren't in any sense religious. We have Catholics, Protestants, Mormons, atheists, Buddhists, New Age people working for us. But our mission is to promote self-critical reflection upon one's own faith and humble dialogue with those of other traditions. That we have two foci. We support graduate schools in religious studies, mainly seminaries. We have about 90 seminaries in developed nations. We serve as their primary or their sole library. Then we also have an open access focus and a focus on serving schools in developing nations, where we serve about 500 schools, thanks to very generous deals from our vendor partners. We have, because of licensing, we actually operate 5 separate libraries. That graduate education, for those of you who don't know, in theological studies, the news is not good. If you're looking to buy a seminary, these are the days. I Googled, there were 29 for sale at last count. That a lot of seminaries are simply going entirely digital post-COVID and selling their campuses, which means, what do you do with the library? Since 2021, the Digital Theological Library has gone in and acquired the print library of 14 seminaries, leaving behind nothing but empty shelves. We now own over 1 million, about 1.125 million dead tree volumes. To give you a sense of context, the average seminary accredited by the Association of Theological Schools has 40,000 volumes. We have 28 times that amount. There are only about 22 seminaries in the world that have more dead tree books and journals than we do. And most of those are attached to major research universities like Duke and Emory and Notre Dame, those kinds of places. Here's our collections. To date, we have digitized about 65,000 book titles and about 750 journal titles the whole run. Our original plan was controlled digital lending. Some of you may have noticed the courts didn't like that idea. So if controlled digital lending is not legal, what do you do now? That's our question. So can you train an AI to answer questions like ChatGPT style based on copyrighted material? The answer is probably, and for those of you who were in the last session, you heard all the nuances of that, but the Google case, the HathiTrust case, and others. But for us right now, we'll wait and see, let the court settle that. So if you can't do it, what can we do? We're going to address a different problem, proprietary metadata. The way it works right now is we have all this book content with these chapters in here, often written by different authors. That's very common in religious studies. And very hard to discover that content in the individual chapter. And the same thing with journals. So what we do is pay third parties for the journals we have sitting on our shelves to help our readers to be able to find the article level content in there. That problem of proprietary metadata at the article level, that's what we're going to try to address. We want to transform discovery of print content via AI. And in religious studies, I might add, thanks to ChatGPT, we've shown you a squirrel with a very long tail. In religious studies, our content has a long tail. The average dissertation in religious studies has a citation of about 25 years old. For us, you know, the man walks on the moon, that's breaking news. Open access, article and book chapter metadata. That's what we're trying to do. And we are committed to making it open access. So anyone would be able to go in, search our bot, find an annotated bibliography answering their questions, not an answer to the question ChatGPT, GTP style or Claude style, but would be able to find an annotated bibliography directing them to the articles and the book chapters that answer their question. So you have this vision of an open access generator for annotated bibliographies for our entire planet. Part of our mission is we want the young lady sitting in Kenya at a coffee shop to have the same opportunities I had as a PhD candidate at a major American university. That's our goal. And the person, the practitioner of religion, the rabbi, the imam, the pastor, the counselor, the therapist, to have access to high quality curated content. That for the book chapters, we want to make those invisible book chapters visible. For the journals, we want to disintermediate the need for these third-party aggregators by making it free and available to everyone. For a lot of people, the bibliography will be enough. If it is, then they look smiling like these folks in this generated picture. If it isn't, then they can run to your library and get an interlibrary loan and get the article or the book to read this content they need. To give you a sense, this requires 6 steps. You have to acquire the content, you have to digitize it, it has to be recognized, you have to tokenize that data set, then you have to train the AI, and then establish an API, an interface. That these 6 steps, we have recognized that we just can't use licensed content to train an AI in any way. The contracts that don't say that soon will, and so we're not even going to address it. That's why we're using only our print dead tree content for our bibliographic training, and that also allows us then to easily do ILL if people want the article. So then you digitize it after you've acquired the content. That's a pretty pricey prospect. That's why you see the $4 signs there. It takes a lot of human time. And yes, we do guillotine everything and run it through a high-speed scanner. It's a lot faster. If you didn't guillotine the content, it would take forever. And then we put it in storage like you saw earlier. Then OCR, the AI has to recognize this is a harder problem than a lot of people realize because of multiple languages. In religious studies, it's routine that we will have Greek, Hebrew, Arabic, Latin, Spanish, French, German, English. And so we have a team of engineers actually working on that right now. They tell me they've just about got it licked. So we're moving on to the stage 4, which then we will tokenize it. And what they will do is apply numbers to each syllable essentially in this content. It's what historically been called the strawberry problem. If you'd ask ChatGPT how many R's are in strawberry, it would say 2 because straw was one token and berry was another. But this tokenizing will be the next process. That's probably $1 sign. Then we'll have to train the AI. That will take tons of electricity, and that creates a different strawberry problem. You put a strawberry in a cup, you put the cup in the microwave, turn the microwave upside down, ask the AI where the strawberry is, and it has no idea. When we're trying to generate these bibliographies, it's multi-step, and we need to train the AI to do each step, to create the bibliography, to create the abstract, and not to hallucinate, of course, and then to give us an output. And they were working on those algorithms. Then the final is an API, an interface where people can ask a question. This will be fairly simple. It's just a website. To give you a sense of where we are now, we've acquired enough content and we're acquiring more. We have digitized a lot of content and we're digitizing more. The OCR team almost has that problem conquered, they tell me. That then we'll move on to the tokenizing the data set, which should go pretty quickly. Then we're probably looking at 2 years to train the AI and have the interface established. What's it take? I went into the DTL petty cash room and took a picture of $1 billion here. That was funny, people. It's interesting though. One week I was at my office and a guy called me and he's talking about AI and stuff. And I thought, is this a salesman? And finally he says, oh, by the way, I'm watching time. He says, oh, by the way, I'm a billionaire and I've heard what you do and I want to help you. And I thought, you got my attention now. And then the same week, a second billionaire called me. For those of you who believe in divinity, it could have been providential. But anyway, this is really expensive, takes a lot of money and resources, and there is no off-the-shelf tool for this. We're sort of creating the wheel from scratch, but we have the right people. Then why not ChatGPT? It's all about copyright. Why not just a question and answer bot? And for those of you, this is the DTL guard dog. So you can remember the guy with the cute dog. 9 minutes and 45 seconds.
Great job. All right.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for sticking around for a presentation. And that was really awesome to hear about your work. I'm Josh McDonald. I'm the collection strategist for George Washington University Libraries and the interim director of research and user services. And this is going to get even more bare bones with the tech. So we'll see.
All right, and I am Elizabeth Kuntz. I am the Research Services Librarian for the Mount Vernon campus. So we're presenting our ongoing effort to create a long-term program of coordinated cross-campus book displays. And we pulled together this project through a combination of need and opportunity. A lot of what we're doing uses resources that are available in many libraries, most notably Alma and Python. So hopefully anyone looking to do something similar can learn from what we've done rather than start from scratch. All right, so we created this project to accomplish a couple of different goals that we'd already been working on. We were approached around October of last year with an opportunity to collaborate with the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Community Engagement at George Washington University, ODECE. And GW actually has multiple campuses. There's that main campus downtown at Foggy Bottom, and then there's also the Mount Vernon campus where I work at Eccles Library. And where I work, I had already been working on monthly book displays with themes that are sort of to promote diversity and different themed months. However, we also were looking for a way to promote our pilot program with Overdrive Academic, and that was already ongoing, but we wanted a way to get it in front of more people. So our stakeholders, ODECE, are the ones who contacted us. They contacted the Library Diversity Committee, who then routed that request to Josh as the collections strategist and me as someone who had already been working on this. So I have looked at the wrong page of my notes. We were sort of scaling up from the Mount Vernon campus to a cross-campus display effort involved getting a lot of other people involved as well. Access Services was a really big partner for us on this, and we also worked very closely with our communications team for promotion and outreach. So on talking it through, we realized that this was a really good opportunity to extend what we were already doing. And we started working to combine elements of the Overdrive project and my existing book display workflows. And since we were already rolling into the semester, this was like an iterative process that changed each and every month. Something was different. And it got a little bit smoother each time. Of course, we ran into a couple challenges. Most notably, we are an e-preferred collector. So a lot of our books are ebooks, including the Overdrive books, which we are specifically trying to promote. And we also share our collections with a large consortium. And generally speaking, we'll only have one copy of a book in the consortium. So how do you display one book in multiple locations? Well, we're not the first people to think of this, but we did start printing out, sorry, our slides are all segmented. We started printing out book covers for the displays with QR codes that had permalinks straight to our library catalog. And this worked for the ebooks as well as print books. And so we are able to now have them in multiple locations. However, there was also a lot of duplication of effort in this because Josh was working downtown and I was working at Mount Vernon, and we kept sending spreadsheets to each other via email, which was a clunky process. And so now we create shared lists using RefWorks, which has the ability to include the MMS IDs, those unique identifiers that we use in Alma Primo. And this allows us to share lists with each other and actually to quickly and easily create user-facing digital collections in addition to the physical collections in the library. And it automatically builds in those permalinks that we need for the QR codes. And this is an overview of our process, the steps that we use to create the Alma Discovery collections, those digital collections. So generally, I create the workflow of the RefWorks list, predominantly using a combination of requests that come in through ODECE and also the We Hear, We Reads archive of diverse literature. And I pull as many physical books as I can from GW, and then I'll also pull in those ebooks and MMS IDs for physical books that are located at a different campus or at a different consortium library. And then this process here is how we create those digital lists for anybody else who's also using Alma Primo.
Thanks. So, of course, there's challenges that come along with any kind of Franken project like this, right? And one of the unspoken ones is scope creep. But one of the things that we started kind of working against was like how to kind of keep combining these workflows to where we're not just repeating the wheel. We're not trying to go too far in one direction. We're not trying to go too far in another direction. The assembling the book jackets part, just getting these QR codes onto a jacket actually ended up being pretty cumbersome. We were having people actually go search for the images themselves, a lot of manual clicking there, or generate the QR codes themselves from the Alma Primo system. It's built-in functionality, but it's not automatable, really. So we started talking about how to automate it. I never want to be in a situation where I'm emailing spreadsheets to anyone ever again. Just does not make sense. So what we started doing is playing around with different ways to share some of this work, right? To collaborate on reading lists, as Liz was saying. So we started out with something like this, which I'm sure lots of you have seen or done, right? Where we're just kind of mapping a QR code onto an image. And I cobbled together some old ImageMagick bash scripts that I'd been working on years ago and just kind of like, okay, let's try to automate this. Let's at least standardize the images. Write a script that can kind of make everything look the same and standardize the sizing and then map that QR code onto it. But as we went through, we started realizing that RefWorks, if you export a reference directly from Primo, RefWorks and Primo talk to each other pretty nicely. And that unique identifier can come over into the display. So this is a really sped up version of just kind of how this works in real time, right? So we've created bibliography, a shared reading list that OEDCE, Liz, and myself can work on. We can just add books to that. We add the books from Primo, and then create a custom reading, like a custom citation style. And because RefWorks can talk to Alma Primo, that custom citation style can contain the notes field where the Alma MMS ID, the unique identifier, is contained, right? And then you can just kind of extract that from that notes field. And so that has a bunch of advantages. One of the easiest ones is that you can also build a collection from that in Primo and display the books digitally directly from that. You've already got the list. You just create your new collection and voila, you have a kind of like internal collection for this month. But you can also export these references this way. So here's a little bit of the script just as a sneak preview. We've got this from a bash script and a shared Google sheet and a few other lines of code, like 3 different scripts, to about 150 lines of Python code, as I've gradually kind of optimized it and refactored things. And so this whole process is just kind of showing the quick and dirty version of how all the template, like how all these things sort of talk together. So in a second here, and I'm being cautious of time, but I think we're fine. What it's doing right now is firing up a browser. I'm using the Selenium package, and we've started out with Amazon because the jackets were like nice and consistent formatting, and all in a kind of a standardized place. We're trying to move that over into Open Library just to get we don't need to use Amazon stuff if we don't have to. And then this last little bit is just kind of kludging it all together. It takes the automatically created permalink, which uses the Segno package in Python, maps the QR code from that onto this jacket, and then creates a whole little, I think we'll pull this up in a second, just kind of maps that whole thing onto a nice little L-shaped printout, right? So we can standardize where the QR code goes, we can standardize where the image goes, and just print all these things out at once. So the final step is just throwing all that together in a PDF and printing them all out and putting them up. So to go back to our display, the final product looks something like this and continues to iterate through. So we'll end up with like this at the end. We'll have a banner over the top. But the actual amount of effort involved is really, really minimized, and the redundancy of effort is minimized. Like Liz can create that display on her end, I can create it on mine. We could share it with another campus if we needed to, and just print out all these things and have nice shelf talkers for each book. And I think we're just at time. 30 seconds. Thank you.
Great. Hi, Linda Rosen. I'm from Harvard Business School, which is one of the many libraries at Harvard University. Harvard Business School has Baker Library, which serves the needs of the student, staff, and faculty and alumni of the Harvard Business School. Today, I'm going to talk about a couple different things. I'm going to talk about the learning modules that Baker Library has developed for our student, staff, faculty, and also outside users, the public who can use it as well. And then I'm going to talk about the content of one of the specific learning modules that we have created, because I think there's sometimes that people get questions about corporate reports and filings, and it's kind of a difficult area to navigate. Nothing to do with AI in this presentation. It's all about actually some older materials and also some current materials that you can find digitized. So we have created the Learn with Baker Library modules. We have 9 modules that extend our services into areas that people have told us that they need to find ways for more flexible and more learning resources in these particular areas. I'll read through them. We have one that's about Baker Basics for MBA students, so specifically to the MBA audience. We have one for our alumni, citing sources, and the corporate reports one that I'm going to go through today. We do have a whole learning module about generative AI, which I would encourage you to look at, which is, I think, quite helpful for folks in all different aspects of the learning journey. And then we have some specific to particular resources like Capital IQ, which is a really important resource for us of financial information on companies, Vital Law, LSEG Workspace, and patent data. The content, again, the audience is mostly MBA students, but there is a lot out there for other folks to look at. So I'd say go take a look. We host the content on GitHub, and I'm giving credit here to my colleague at Baker Library, Nick Lamb, who is our technology librarian and who has created these modules. He uses GitHub, and he uses the program called Articulate 360 for the content creation, and then uses Camtasia for the video editing. This is all his world, not my world. I'm actually the collections manager for Baker. So I'm handling all the licenses with all our data providers. But Nick and I work closely on this, and I figured I would be here today to present the material. And this gives folks who are using these learning modules an asynchronous, practical, and interactive format for them to use when they need to refer to material that's past the time that we're around. So the module I'm going to focus on today is corporate reports and filings. So we've named it corporate reports and filings, but corporate reports equals annual reports. And I think most of us might be familiar with annual reports that companies publish more digitally now, but also in print, that are the fancy glossy materials that you get. So when we say corporate reports, we do mean those annual reports. But be aware there's many other types of corporate filings. These are periodic filings by government regulators. So in the United States, it's the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. So you will see annual reports, which are 10K. So the 10K is actually the written content, the statistics, the figures without the glossy pictures and the covers and all that sort of stuff. Quarterly reports, 8Ks, there are other kinds of filings. And then for international companies, we've got the 20F filing. So I'm going to actually try to do a demo of this module in a minute, but here's some key takeaways in case the module is not loading. All corporate reports are actually not electronically searchable in one research go. And I think that's something to remember. If someone comes in and wants to find all the annual reports for a particular company back in time, at this point, they're not all available in one research go. So it's going to take a little bit of time to find them in various formats. It could be some is going to be electronic, some is going to be actually in print, or maybe even in a format called like microfiche, which is an old-fashioned format, but we have them, and we'll talk about that a little bit. The research use cases that we have in our module really provide insight into the types of questions and projects that require corporate reports. So you'll see when we go into the learning module, it helps sort of demystify what people are asking when they come in asking for financial information on companies. And then the learning module does talk about what the various formats are with paper, with microfiche, digitized databases, and all are described and tips for access are provided. So let's see if I can do it. All right, so this is our learning module. This is the Baker Library website. You're welcome to visit it. And I'll just go through a couple of things here. I wanted to draw your attention to, first of all, the lovely format in which we have developed it. And there's an overview. There's narration that goes along with it. And the thing I wanted to focus on today was just the first part, which talks about sort of the background on corporate reports and filings, and goes over what's a glossy report versus what's the statistical report. It gives you information on what important CEO letters have in the whole process of looking for company information and analyzing what a company is doing. And it comes down to other information on how you can use them in your work. Research use cases is another part that I wanted to focus on. Again, when people come in and ask for information, the research use cases we give actual sort of case histories of what people have done with the annual reports that we have in our collection. So when you go to recent materials, it'll go through what a researcher is asking. They're writing a case on an international company. So what would you use? Consider using a database. You may or may not have access to something like LSEG Workspace, but you might find a alternative resource like that. And then it might tell you to look directly at the actual documents on the site. In addition to recent case histories, we also have historical materials, and those will go over people who, in this case, needed letters to shareholders, and it points again to like historical annual reports in ProQuest, the Mergent Archives, or our very own special collection and archives. And if you're in the Boston area, or if you want to make an appointment, reach out to the special collections at Baker Library, and outside researchers are welcome to come in and use our historical materials there. And then finally, I'll just do a little bit on formats. We have all kinds of crazy formats that people are not actually thinking of so much anymore, including the microfiche collection. And we have a little bit of a picture here of what it looks like. We actually have a reader, and people can come in and use the materials on fiche using the reader. And it's really the only way that you can get to some of these materials that are still available to people. So those are some of the areas that we focus on in this learning module. The last one I wanted to talk about is non-U.S. filing considerations. So if you're getting someone who's coming in and asking about non-U.S. companies, we have a lot of good suggestions for locating 20Fs, for locating American depository receipts, and we're always happy to direct you to resources if you don't have access to the ones that we provide. Great. Thanks very much.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm Bob Weaver, the Collection Development Librarian at the Jerry Falwell Library, Liberty University. For the next few minutes, I'd like to talk about a method called the use factor method, which I've used for 5 years now to interpret circulation counts as they relate to collection decisions that I make as part of my job. It occurs to me that this is an unusual topic for a conference that has been mostly about digital objects and AI, neither of which will have anything to do with my presentation. But libraries do still have physical books, and they still need intelligent curation. As this is a lightning talk, I will be talking very rapidly about 3 things: how the use factor method works, what I use it for, and why I like it. So let me begin by saying that I did not invent this method. 6 or 7 years ago, I came upon it while I was reading back issues of collection management journals. My last slide includes the citation for the articles that explain this method. I want to make clear that I also do not use this method in isolation. It is a tool, but it's only one of the tools in my drawer that I use when I'm making collection decisions. Now, every library counts the circulation of its books. When it comes time to evaluate books based on circulation, though, there is an issue. The circulation number is really without a context. It's a number in isolation. Is 5 circulations good? Is 10 circulations twice as good? Who knows? It's very subjective. The use factor method puts circulation stats into comparison with the larger collection and asks, how well has this been contributing to the collection recently? Here's how it works. There we go. For all of the 270 plus subclasses in the LC system, I use our ILS analytics module. We use Alma at our school. Use the analytics module to count all the physical items in that subclass. For each section, I calculate what percentage of that subclass that section represents. I then get a count of all the circulations in that subclass over the last 5 years. For each section, I calculate the percentage of total circulations that that section represents. Then I calculate a ratio of those 2 percentages. The ratio is the use factor score for that section. And note that this is at the section level, not down to the items just yet. The assumption that underlies this method is that everything gets used evenly, that books that make up 1% of a subclass are also responsible for 1% of its circulation. The optimal use factor then would be 1.0. Now, we all know that this only sometimes works out that way. Some parts of the collection get used very heavily while others get ignored. So the use factor score can range from down to 0 up to that median, that target of 1, up to 2 or 3 or even more. When a use factor score is above 1.0, that section can be said to be overused. It's not meeting all the demand placed on it, and there will be ways to respond to that. When the use factor score is below 1.0, the section is underused, getting less attention than we may expect or hope for. That calls for a different sort of response. And every subclass, no surprise, is going to be a mix of over and underused sections. There we go. I'm sorry if this is a little bit small, but this is an example of the use factor report that I did for subclass BF, which is psychology. This is not the whole subclass, it's just a slice of it to show you what I'm talking about. The first column on the left is the section numbers. The next 2 are the counts and the percentages for that section's holdings. The use factor score is in the middle in the green circle. The right side is the same arrangement for the circulations. Now, I counted the last 5 years worth of circulations, but it could be trimmed down to 3 years or up to 10 years. It's really up to you how you want to do that. The holdings cell and the left column that are shaded in green represent sections that are larger than average. Down at the bottom, I have an average value calculated, and I'm more interested in looking at the bigger sections. While the 2 rows, let's see here, and the rows going across, the one that's in red Hopefully you can read that. I should have done something with a contrast, but the use factor score there is 0.59, kind of low. But the holdings column is shaded green, so that was a bigger one. The two green rows, one is very large and the other one is very small, but you see they both have a positive use factor score. And down at the bottom, at the center, there's one circled in orange. That's an outlier value. And below that is the average use factor score for the entire subclass, which is only 0.78. Let's see. I keep all these reports in 3-ring binders on my desk because I find it's easier for me that way to reference something quickly. Just grab the folder and look it up. But of course, since these are made with Excel, it'll be very easy to keep these in an online folder in a shared network somewhere so that everybody in the department can get at it. It's up to you. I have at this point, I'll mention 5 years worth of historical use factor data. Now, what do I do with all this? Well, I do a number of things. The first one is the ever popular topic of weeding. Weeding is challenging. I know a lot of librarians don't enjoy it. I do. And I use the use factor to identify areas of a subclass which I can meaningfully and safely weed from. For example, you look at that subclass that's there in red, 65 items. That's a fair number. At least at one point, we must have thought that was an important section because why else would there be that many books in it? But clearly, not all those books are still being used. Some of them are, but not all of them. So at this point, I could take and drill down to the books in that section and say, okay, what are the old ones? And bring in other considerations, what hasn't been used, what's really out of date, et cetera, et cetera. And I can pretty safely take those out of the collection without really impacting the parts that are still seeing use. Now, obviously, the sections there with a use factor of 0.0, nobody's touched that in 5 years, so that's the low-hanging fruit. That's the easy target. But I could also go into the section that's got 506 and a positive use factor. I bet you the same thing there. Not everything's getting used, and I might take a few things out of there as well. Let me move on. I also use the use factor when I'm reviewing donations, and that seems to be a large part of my job. Donations are a mixed bag for libraries. They don't cost anything for the library to acquire, but there's no guarantee that it's stuff that we really wanted or needed. So to save, especially the cataloging department, time, I want to only pass along to them things that have a good, reasonable likelihood of being used in the future. And the use factor score suggests or tends toward exactly that. It's not a perfect guarantee. We can't predict the future, but it is a good indicator. I use the use factor score when I work on collection development. Like probably many of you, I get weekly slip lists from ProQuest, free shout out if ProQuest is in the room. But I go through that list and check all of those entries for their call number and look up the use factor score for that call number. And if it's on the low side, then I'll just take it out. I think it's better to send the department faculty that I work with a shorter list of things that are more likely to be interesting, that will be looked at and potentially purchased, than a larger list of things that are not of interest. I use the use factor score also when I'm looking at what to do with lost or missing or damaged books. Replacing or repairing those things will cost the university time and money. And so it's reasonable and responsible to ask if it's worth replacing this. And if the preponderance of the evidence says no, then it'll be withdrawn instead of replaced. Again, I don't use the use factor in isolation, but I use it with the other tools at my disposal to try and make those decisions. All right, so, and I think there's probably a few other things, but let me move forward in interest of time to why I like this, why I like using this. The use factor is a ratio based on percentages, so it maintains its relevance and its predictive capacity, whether the subclass is large or small. it surprised me to discover that a lot of the subclasses that have an average positive use factor are the small ones, whereas some of our really big classes, which generate a lot of our circulation, no surprise, actually had fairly low scores. So those are things that, and there I want to say, well, what can I do to, improve that? But because it's a calculation based on percentages, as I said, it's more of an objective evaluation of the subclass across the board. If one accepts the underlying premise, then the results, as I say, are about as objective as we can expect. Now, I can't speak for anyone else in the room, but I occasionally run into this thing called imposter syndrome, where I feel like, can I really be making a good decision about this? And so the more objective nature of this method gives me confidence that I'm making good decisions. So that's a good thing. I also like that there's no calculus or statistics involved, because that makes me break out in a cold sweat. But the math is pretty simple. It's simple to explain, it's simple to calculate, and simple to understand. Simple is good. And I see him coming, which means I'm probably just about out of time. So let me conclude that the use factor method is simple to calculate and explain. It gives a pretty reliable indicator of where I should be putting my time and attention. And that helps me to work towards making our print collection responsive to the needs of our users. Thank you. Oh, and there's the bibliography. Oh, I've been cut off. Uh-oh.
Can we show his last slide, please, so folks have that? All right.
And there's my email address if you want to ask questions.
Very good. Thank you. And last but not least, Mr. Richard Hodges and Mr. Jamie Wright. Gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. What we wanted to talk about today is a tool that is really an excellent tool that we've recently adopted at Florida Southwestern State College, and it's really revolutionized the way that we are able to analyze our collection. How we're going to present this information today, here's just a basic layout. Introduce you to Florida Southwestern, which we call FSW. Then Jamie will introduce you to the tool itself, Collection HQ, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how we use this. But first, a little about Florida Southwestern. As you can see, we started in 1962, and as a institution, it began as a junior college, later became a community college. Its name has changed from Edison State College to Florida Southwestern State College. It does cover quite a vast area of southwestern Florida, and we have approximately 10,000 full-time students, which means we have about 16,000 total students at our school. We offer a mix, just like in fact, I would say all 28 of Florida's state colleges offer both bachelor's and 2-year degrees. And so it's kind of a hybrid. It's a little bit different. It's my understanding that this started about 10 or 15 years ago. Give you a sense of where we're located. So when winter comes on, everybody's looking at snow or maybe snow. We're still wearing flip-flops. To give you a kind of a background, I came in to Florida Southwestern in July of 2020. I had been in Virginia for 10 years, and upon coming in, of course, we're in the midst of COVID. The librarians, many who had been there for a long time, said, they really needed to do a big weeding. So we did. We weeded about a third of the collection. And as we went through this, we began to think, how can we rebuild the collection, but this time do it smarter? Be sure that we're getting items that are really part of the curriculum and are up to date. A couple of things. One was print versus digital. We do purchase heavy in the digital area, but we have print. So in 2022, I was at the Florida Library Association meeting, and I saw Jamie Wright and his team do a presentation of Collection HQ. And at that time, it was primarily for public libraries, but they were developing the academic side of it. And so I made it clear that we would be very interested in adopting this, or at least looking at it. And so as it progressed in its production, he kept us in mind. And so I believe we are the first of the 28 colleges in Florida to adopt this tool. And we really, really look forward to the way it targets our collection, and I'll show you that a little bit later. Jim?
Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can understand my Scottish accent, so I'll try and be slow. So they flew me over here to talk about CHQ Academic. So we've got over 8,000 libraries around the world using our software. We've been doing this for 20 years, and we moved into the academic section earlier this year. What amazes me in the academic scene is how complicated the tools that you all use. Who likes a nice complicated spreadsheet? Not me. I like to work smart. So CHQ, it takes that big data out of Alma and simplifies it. It gives you a turnkey solution, and it uses an evidence-based stock management methodology to do that. So all the things that you're taking days, weeks, months ago is a click of the button in Collection HQ. So most ILSs have some sort of data analytics, and it sounds amazing, but it can be complicated, stressful, time-consuming, and doesn't meet your needs. And that's what we see everywhere I go and speak to. I can get that data, Jamie, but it's going to take me a long time. We can easily maintain your collections data. So first of all, you can set up a workflow. What areas of your collection do you want to be weeding? Do I want to be looking at my nursing collection? I need to look at my accredited collection. Am I looking at my engineering collection? And you can put that through your calendar over a 12-month window. Set and forget. And that will send out this information to all of your colleagues in an email, telling them what you want them to do. So gone are the days of pulling big spreadsheets out and saying, don't touch that, don't touch that one, don't touch that one. You can do that in our system by simply setting and forgetting. In spring in 2025, we're going to bring out a new part of the system that will be prioritized list, where you can prioritize what you want them to touch. Has to be out of date. Has to be, we call it grubby, which is poor condition. It may well be not used in many years. All of this information can be put into this Excel spreadsheet that'll be attached. And when it comes to that time, whether it be November, December, January, it will work out, this is the priorities, and send that to you. So you get that eureka moment, because anyone's like me, I have 101 different hats, and I can't spend time in spreadsheets. So this is what our action plans look like. I don't need to go on Amazon to get book jackets. It's all in our system. And the biggest part of our action plans are the scannable barcodes. So it simplifies that process. So when I go to the shelf, I can take the book cart, I can scan the barcodes on the printout, and it saves time. Working smart again. We've even got a new function that we just released last month, and you'll see in the top left corner there, a scan barcode. You put a barcode in, it tells you about the life and times of that book. It gives you that metrics. Is it out of date? Is it DEI? Is it core? All that information, a touch of a button. No searching multiple Alma tools to get that information. The biggest part of our system, and universities around the world are using that, is our diversity, equity, and inclusion. We use multiple data points to gather that information so that you can have touch a button, it will give you that. So for instance, Library of Congress subject headings, BISAC, we have librarians at Baker and Taylor reviewing content. We have a global community of librarians adding and taking content of their libraries, and we're tracking that day in, day out. We also have partners. And this is a screenshot of what it looks like. It gives you that information, and you can drill down further, down to the book jacket in there. And I've just shown you the tip of the iceberg of what the system can do because I've only got a few minutes. But this is our methodology. The scheduler, so you're going to set it up, you manage, you improve, you evaluate, and it's continuous. So easy, and it's just the beginning.
So to give you an idea of what we do recently with this, I had a couple of things. One, I'll show you just a demo search that I did, but also for practical reasons, there's a presentation this afternoon at my school, and so my assistant director is going to represent the library there, and he said, how many print books do we have? The exact number. I'd like to be able to say that. And I said, well, let's see. So we decided, well, let's just run a search through CHQ and a search through Alma and see what it looks like. The numbers were identical. However, the CHQ search took me about 2 minutes. The Alma search took our Alma administrator about 2 hours to get exactly what I wanted. So while the Alma search is very good at drilling down, I didn't need to drill down. I just needed just a set number. So, but if I do need to drill down, I can use CHQ, and this is a good example of it. We are a Hispanic serving institution. However, our collection does not represent that. And so I want to find out where are we at in terms of languages. And so as you can see here, we have a large number of out-of-date items within that section. Our library, we have about 18,000 print materials, but we have about 300,000 digital books. And so this, what you're seeing is, what you're seeing is print, is a reflection of print. This is another breakdown of it, which gives me a little bit more in terms of languages. Where we're located, it's not just Spanish language, but there's also Caribbean languages that are spoken in the region. This gives you another little bit more of it. And again, you can break them down to the barcode level as well, which is, as Jamie said, is incredibly helpful, especially when you're talking about inventory. Thank you very much.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, does anyone have a burning question that they want to ask before I ask my question? Question? Okay. Okay, outer box is good. So I have one question. If you could take 30 seconds, each of you to answer. Everyone can answer. What is the main benefit of what you presented today to the librarian? We'll just go down the line.
Saving time to do multiple things at once.
Okay.
Is this on?
Oh yeah, I don't know if this is on.
Oh, there's a button.
Hello. Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, we actually sort of creating what Josh created, a program that anybody can use fairly easily.
I think I said it before. The method I was describing is takes opinion and value judgment out of the decision making. It's based on math and calculation rather than my perception of the usefulness of a book.
For us, it's encouraging people to use learning modules and some of the technology that we've used, like Camtasia, and storing the materials on GitHub and using these modules to help your students learn better at 3 o'clock in the morning when they're looking for stuff.
I would like for people to take away that you can get answers to questions very simply and quickly using the software that we talked about.
As my wife said to me before I got here, KISS. And I was like, keep it simple, stupid. That's what we do. Just keep it simple, empower your staff. That's what software is all about.
Thinking about your library and serving your users, but at the same time thinking about how you can expand to serve the world in general. That serving underrepresented audiences and narrowing the information gap between developed and developing nations is essential to what we do. So when we serve our privileged users, we think about how we can also serve those who have less privilege. And as librarians, I think that should be in all of our minds all the time.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Let's give our panel a big round of applause for great presentations.